June 26th, 2025, a day that began like any other in Taos County, New Mexico. At 6:15 a.m., Melissa Casias drove her husband to work at Los Alamos National Laboratory. Both worked at the lab. But later that morning, she realized she'd forgotten her badge. So instead of going in, she returned home to work remotely. By midday, Melissa made her way into town, stopping to deliver lunch to her daughter, Sierra, at the John Dunn shops in Taos. That would be the last time anyone saw her home, driving away. Later, doorbell camera footage would show her walking alone along State Road 518 near Talpa. When Sierra returned home, Melissa was gone. Her purse, keys, wallet, car all remained. Her phones were wiped clean, factory reset, with no trace. She vanished into the afternoon heat, as if she had stepped off the face of the earth. What drove Melissa onto that lonely road? Who, if anyone, was watching? And how does one disappear so completely in a place captured by cameras, seen by witnesses, yet leave no trail? Over the next few minutes, we'll walk through every shred of what is known, every clue and contradiction, every lead that offered hope, and the ones that remain stubbornly unanswered. You'll hear from her family, investigators, and experts. Together, we'll peer into the gaps. Stick with me, because by the end, the question won't be whether Melissa left by choice or was taken, but whether we've been looking in the right places at all. It was early morning, June 26th, 2025, the kind of morning that seems to promise nothing more than another day of work, errands, family life. In Taos County, New Mexico, the sky was clear, the air dry. Roads stretched out through sandy hillsides, juniper trees, the quiet hush of a small town waking up. Imagine driving through State Road 518 toward Talpa, that stretch of highway where life feels exposed, the world open. In her car, Melissa Casias pulled away from home to drop her husband at Los Alamos National Laboratory. She was doing what she always did. On time, methodical, dependable. By mid-morning, she realized she'd left her lab badge behind and turned back to fetch it. A small detour, just part of her routine. Later, Melissa stopped in town, picked up her daughter's lunch, delivered it at John Dunn shops in Taos. She spoke with neighbors, walked between shops. Everything seemed ordinary. Suggested visual, a quaint small-town shopping plaza, storefronts, pedestrians. But by early afternoon, something shifted. Doorbell camera footage would later show her walking alone along NM 518 in Talpa, a stretch of road bordered by mountains and open land. Her car, keys, wallet, phone, all left behind. Her phone wiped clean. One moment she was there, the next gone. How do you vanish on a road seen by cameras, traversed by neighbors, in a town so interconnected? What could drive someone who left everything behind to walk into the unknown? And if someone else was involved, where would they have hidden? How would they have avoided detection? It began in the hush before dawn. Imagine a sleepy New Mexico morning. The sky pale, the air cold, the roads mostly empty. A single car turns on a State Road 518, heading north of Taos toward Talpa. Inside sits Melissa Casias, early enough to hear her own tires whisper against the asphalt. She is doing what she always did, commuting, stepping in her role, living a life that seemed ordinary. But on this June day, a small change would upend everything. By mid-morning, Melissa would be captured on a doorbell camera, walking on the roadside. Her car would stay where she left it. Her keys, wallet, phone, all left behind. And then, silence. How does someone vanish so completely from a place so visible, so familiar? What snapped out of place in a routine day? And who might have watched or followed and hidden in plain sight? At 6:15 a.m., Melissa drove her husband, Mark Casias, to a shift at the Los Alamos National Laboratory. They both worked there. It was just another morning, predictable in quiet ways. Minutes later, back at home, the house quiet, the world still waking, she realized she'd forgotten her access badge. Rather than go to the lab, she turned back, intending to work from home that day. This small decision, turning around, would become a hinge in her timeline. After that, she made a trip into town. Her route took her to the John Dunn shops in Taos, where she picked up her daughter's lunch to bring to Sierra Casias. She spoke with neighbors, browsed briefly, walked between storefronts. No one reported anything out of the ordinary. It seems simple, unremarkable, routine, but we know by the end of the day, nothing would remain simple. Pause and consider. At what point does a routine day slip into a mystery? Who watches a routine? And which moment becomes the moment she is lost? By early afternoon, surveillance footage would show Melissa walking alone on NM 518 in Talpa, a stretch of open road with few houses, few witnesses, and long sight lines. Her car remained stationary. Her phone would later be discovered wiped, as though it had never held a memory. Family members would return to find her gone. Gone without a trace, as if she had simply stepped out of existence. In the hours that followed, emergency calls would be placed, local searches activated, law enforcement alerted. The theory lists would begin, but none would satisfy the emptiness of her absence. Before we move deeper into the search, let me ask you, if you were retracing her steps, which moment would you freeze and examine? Which clue would you trust? What is missing that should be there? These questions will guide us through every hour, every lead, every contradiction ahead. By midday, Taos had awakened fully, sun climbing, afternoon heat edging in, locals moving between errands and errands. Melissa moved through those streets like she always did. No one saw anything remarkable. She collected her daughter's lunch, exchanged pleasantries with shopkeepers, navigated small parking lots, walked sidewalks, entered doorways, and exited again. She carried herself with focus, mindful of tasks. One neighbor later recalled seeing a woman matching her description walking past a cafe, carrying a lunch bag. Another said she paused at a doorway, glanced around, then moved on. Nothing screamed abnormal. What could have shifted between those calmer moments, and what came next? Was she being followed? Did she sense something was off? Or was everything still seemingly normal? As the afternoon progressed, surveillance or doorbell camera footage would show Melissa walking along State Road 518, near Talpa. It's a stretch of highway with few houses, limited cover, long sight lines. A road where someone walking is immediately visible to drivers, to residents, to cameras. Once on that road, there was no turning back, at least visibly. She walked. No car pulled over in footage. No known witness stepped forward in real time to halt her. Her car was parked somewhere else, her phone silent, her other possessions left behind. Imagine being there, walking that road. How would you feel? Exposed? Vulnerable? Calm? Fearful? By the time her family realized something was wrong, every ordinary anchor was still where she had left it. Her car remained. Her keys were untouched. Her wallet wasn't home. Her phone was gone, wiped clean, as though her digital life erased. These facts make one thing clear. Something interrupted her path. Either she was pulled off course, or she resolved to step away from every tie she had that day. But which is more plausible? No one saw her depart in a vehicle. No confirmed trace of a driver or passenger. Nothing final to point at. Later that evening, Melissa's daughter, Sierra, returned home. She found the house familiar, quiet, and empty of what should have been there. Her mother. She checked familiar places, living room, kitchen, bedroom. No sign she had left voluntarily. She called out, called phones, retraced usual routines. Nothing. When Mark, her husband, arrived, he found the car still in place. The scene was frozen. At some point, the family filed a missing persons report. Search efforts began in the dark, in terrain and roads and edges. Yet at that moment, the only trail was questions. If someone intended harm, how did they manage to do it without leaving evidence? If Melissa wanted to disappear, why leave behind the tools that would let her vanish? Phone? Car? Wallet? What moments in that afternoon timeline are weak links? Moments that need re-examination. Could the camera footage, pedestrian reports, or phone records shed light or mislead? These questions will guide us deeper into the investigation. We'll track every lead, examine every hypothesis, and weigh what adds up and what still doesn't. The first 24 hours after Melissa vanished were chaos wrapped in disbelief. Family, friends, police, Everyone converged on one question. Where did she go? At first, officers treated it as a routine missing person report. Maybe she needed space. Maybe she'd gone off-grid. But Mark and Sierra knew better. Melissa wasn't impulsive. She was steady, predictable in the best way. Officers searched the area around her home, the hiking trails, the roadside near NM 518, gas stations, motels. Nothing. No footprints, no purse, no phone signal. It was as if Melissa had walked into thin air. But can anyone truly vanish without leaving something behind? Investigators turned their attention to Melissa's cell phone, her digital lifeline. But what they found was unsettling. Her phone had stopped transmitting at 3:42 p.m. the day she disappeared. No texts, no calls, no GPS pings after that time. Then came the shocker. Her phone had been factory reset remotely. All contacts, photos, messages, erased. Who had access to do that? Was it Melissa herself? Or was someone else trying to cover their tracks? The tech experts couldn't retrieve a trace. It was a clean wipe. Too clean. By day 3, investigators received their first possible break. A local resident claimed to have seen a white pickup truck idling on NM 518 that afternoon, around the same time Melissa was last seen. Another witness mentioned a man standing beside the road, wearing a cap and dark sunglasses. But no one got a license plate. No one took a photo. Was it coincidence? Or the shadow of the truth trying to be noticed? Detectives ran through every registered white pickup in the area, hundreds of them, none tied directly to Melissa. Still, that lead lingered, like a ghost that refused to fade. As days turned into weeks, police began to dig deeper, not just into Melissa's disappearance, but into her life. Her marriage, her job, her friends. Mark Signs, her husband, faced uncomfortable questions. Did they argue recently? Was their marriage happy? Did he know about her movements that day? Mark cooperated for the most part, but inconsistencies crept in. He said she left home around 1:30 p.m. A neighbor's security camera showed her leaving at 1:05 p.m. It seemed minor, but in missing persons investigations, every minute matters. Did Mark simply misremember, or was he hiding something in plain sight? Volunteers, dogs, and drones scoured the rugged terrain outside Taos. The desert air was dry, the wind biting, and the landscape unforgiving. Teams combed through ravines, abandoned sheds, and back roads. For 14 straight days, the search stretched across 40 square miles. Nothing. Not a piece of clothing. Not a footprint. Not a single confirmed clue. How could a person, a mother, a wife, a friend, simply disappear in the open? When local leads dried up, the internet took over. Retrace, Facebook groups, TikTok sleuths. Everyone had a theory. Some said Melissa ran away to start a new life. Others believed she was abducted by someone she knew. A few whispered about corruption, a cover-up involving someone in law enforcement. And as theories multiplied, one question remained at the heart of every discussion. What was Melissa running from, or toward? Then, on the 11th day, something changed. A hiker in the hills east of Taos found a women's scarf, tangled in brush, about 2 miles from where Melissa was last seen. The color? A deep maroon, just like the one she was wearing that day. DNA testing was inconclusive. No blood, no fibers linking it to her home. But the find reignited the investigation. Could this be the breadcrumb everyone had been waiting for? Who wiped Melissa's phone and why? Was the white truck connected, or just coincidence? Could someone close to her know more than they've admitted? And what does that maroon scarf really mean? Every question feels like a thread, leading somewhere dark, hidden, and unfinished. As the search dragged into its 3rd week, investigators turned their focus to the person who knew Melissa best, her husband, Mark Signs. At first, Mark appeared cooperative. He attended every press briefing, handed out flyers, and pleaded for Melissa's safe return. But behind closed doors, detectives noticed inconsistencies. Mark claimed he last saw Melissa at 1:30 p.m. Security footage showed her leaving earlier. He said she took her phone, yet the phone's signal died miles away, in the opposite direction from where he said she went. Small details, But in missing persons cases, small details are often the doorway to the truth. So detectives brought Mark in again, this time under a sharper light. The room was quiet. A camera recorded every movement. Mark sat across from two detectives, a cup of coffee untouched beside him. Detective Alvarez leaned in. "Mark, is there anything you haven't told us?" Mark shook his head. "I've told you everything." But the tension in his jaw said otherwise. When asked about the couple's last argument, Mark hesitated, then admitted they'd argued over money and Melissa's plan to take a break from the marriage. That revelation changed everything. Was Melissa planning to leave? And if so, did someone want to make sure she never got the chance? Investigators pulled Melissa's financial records, and what they found raised eyebrows. 2 days before she vanished, she'd withdrawn $4,000 in cash from her account, money that was never found. She'd also searched online for short-term rentals in Albuquerque, and one listing matched a place near the road where her car was last seen. Was she planning a new life? Or was someone watching her, anticipating her every move? To make things more unsettling, a neighbor's security camera captured a blurred figure near the sign's driveway around 10 p.m., the night before she disappeared. That person has never been identified. Then came another twist, one that shook the family to its core. 3 days after Melissa vanished, her sister Sierra received a text message from Melissa's number. It read, "I need space. Don't look for me." But here's the chilling part. The message didn't sound like her. The tone, the punctuation, the phrasing. It felt wrong. Cell tower data showed the message was sent from an area 40 miles south of where her phone last pinged. How could that be? Was Melissa still alive? Or was someone using her phone to buy time? Detectives brought in FBI tech specialists. They combed through every trace of digital data, every deleted file. Buried deep in a backup cloud file, they found something strange. A photo fragment time-stamped an hour before Melissa's phone went dark. It showed what looked like the inside of a car. The interior was dimly lit, and part of a man's arm wearing a black sleeve was visible in the corner. But the face? Missing. The image was corrupted. Could that be Mark's car? Or someone else entirely? The FBI couldn't confirm. The fragment was too damaged. But it became a key piece of evidence in a case already riddled with half-truths. By the 5th week, Taos wasn't the quiet desert town it once was. Media vans lined the streets. Journalists camped outside the sign's home. The community wanted answers, and rumors filled the silence that the investigation left behind. Some said Mark was innocent, grieving like any husband would. Others whispered about an affair, about a coworker named Eddie Montoya, who'd grown close to Melissa in the months before she vanished. When police questioned Eddie, he denied any involvement. He said Melissa had confided in him, that she wanted to start fresh, move to Albuquerque, and figure herself out. But Eddie's alibi that day had a 1-hour gap. He couldn't account for where he was between 2 o'clock and 3 p.m., the same window Melissa disappeared. Was it coincidence or the missing piece of a much darker puzzle? Remember that white pickup truck spotted near an M? 518? Weeks later, a local rancher came forward, saying he'd seen a red truck that same afternoon, parked near the hiking trail Melissa often walked. Police retrieved traffic cam footage, and sure enough, a red Ford F-150 appeared at 3:15 p.m., heading toward the same area. And the driver? Unclear. The image was blurred, distorted by sun glare. But when investigators traced that truck's registration, it was registered to none other than Eddie Montoya. The pieces were starting to align, but not clearly enough to accuse anyone. The lines between truth, coincidence, and deceit were blurring fast. Through it all, Sierra, Melissa's sister, refused to give up. She organized search groups, posted on social media, begged for any information. Every day, she drove past Melissa's favorite cafe, hoping she'd walk out one more time, just like before. When hope fades slowly, it hurts twice as much. And for the Signs family, that pain was now part of their daily life. Who sent that text from Melissa's phone? Why did Eddie's alibi fall apart? What really happened between Melissa and Mark in those final days? And whose arm appeared in that mysterious photo? 46 days had passed since Melissa vanished. 46 days of searching speculating, and waiting for a call that never came. Then, one evening, Detective Alvarez received an unexpected tip, an anonymous email claiming to have seen something the day Melissa disappeared. The sender wrote, "Check the old service road near Arroyo Hondo." She was there with him. No name, no return address, just that message. Officers followed the lead the next morning, and what they found would shift the investigation completely. The old service road was narrow and half buried in sand. It hadn't been used in years, except, it seemed, once. A few feet from a dry creek bed, officers noticed tire impressions, faint but fresh. Near them, something metallic glinted in the sunlight. It was a bracelet, engraved with the words, "Love, always M." Melissa's sister confirmed it belonged to her. The search team expanded the perimeter, and just beyond a cluster of sagebrush, they found a tarp partially buried, and beneath it, what appeared to be a burned sleeping bag and charred fabric. No remains, no definitive link, but for the first time, there was physical evidence that pointed to something far darker than a disappearance. Was Melissa out there all along, just hidden in plain sight? The discovery near Arroyo Hondo put new pressure on detectives to revisit every suspect, especially Eddie Montoya. When officers brought him in for a second round of questioning, Eddie appeared nervous. His story began to shift. He now admitted that Melissa had confided in him about leaving Taos, but insisted he didn't see her that day. Yet phone tower records placed Eddie's cell near Arroyo Hondo the same afternoon Melissa vanished. When confronted, Eddie stammered, I drove that way sometimes to clear my head. That's all." But detectives weren't convinced. They searched his truck, the red F-150, and found fibers consistent with the char material from the tarp site. It wasn't proof, but it was something. To silence public doubt, Eddie agreed to take a polygraph test. But midway through, he asked for a break, then never returned to finish. That move alone sent a message louder than any question could. Meanwhile, his lawyer told reporters Eddie was being unfairly targeted, but the evidence against him was beginning to close in like a tightening circle. Was Eddie guilty, or was he just another victim of a web much larger than anyone could see? Just when the case seemed to be narrowing, another strange twist emerged. Forensic analysts examined the metadata from the anonymous email tip. It traced back to an IP address linked to Mark Saenz' workplace. When questioned, Mark insisted he had no idea how that could happen. He said his work computer was shared, that maybe someone else used it. But detectives couldn't ignore the possibility. Had Mark himself tipped him off to mislead? Or had he panicked, trying to direct suspicion elsewhere? And if so, why now? Friends of Melissa began speaking up. They recalled moments when Melissa confided that her marriage was strained, that Mark could be controlling, that she felt trapped, but she stayed, out of fear or out of hope that things might change. One friend even revealed a chilling detail that Melissa had once told her, "If something ever happens to me, it won't be an accident." Those words haunted everyone who heard them. Weeks later, a journalist filed a request for the 911 logs from the night before Melissa vanished. Buried within the call records was a 30-second audio clip made from a dropped call traced to Melissa's address. Time-stamped 11:47 p.m. On the recording, there's heavy breathing. Then a woman's voice, faint but panicked. "Stop, please just stop," followed by a sharp sound. Then silence. The voice was never officially confirmed to be Melissa's, but those who knew her swore it was. And that discovery changed everything. The Saenz family was torn apart. Mark became withdrawn, refusing interviews. Sierra, meanwhile, refused to rest, vowing to keep her sister's story alive, even as hope began to fade. She said in one interview, "I don't care how long it takes. Someone out there knows what happened to my sister, and I won't stop until they speak." That night, as hundreds gathered under the New Mexico sky, the crowd stood in silence. No answers, just prayers and the soft hum of grief carried by the wind. Who sent the anonymous email, and why? Why did the 911 call vanish from the system for weeks? Were the burned items part of a cover-up or a misdirection? And most importantly, who was Melissa really afraid of? Everything begins to unravel. Lies collide with truth, hidden loyalties are exposed, and one shocking revelation will challenge everything we thought we knew about the disappearance of Melissa Casias. By the 8th week, the case of Melissa Casias had reached a breaking point. Detectives were exhausted, the community was divided, and the family was slowly falling apart. Mark rarely left the house. Sierra stopped taking calls from reporters. And online, the story had turned into something else entirely. Theories, arguments, and accusations that blurred the line between fact and fiction. But behind the scenes, detectives had one last card to play. A single lead they'd been quietly chasing since the discovery of that 911 audio. The FBI's digital forensics unit revisited the phone data recovered from Melissa's backup cloud. Hidden inside one of the corrupted photo files was a thumbnail cache, fragments of previously deleted images. One of them, when enhanced, showed Melissa in her car, clearly frightened, her eyes darting towards someone outside the driver's side window. The timestamp? 3:14 p.m., the very day she vanished. Even more chilling, the reflection matched the build and clothing Eddie Montoya wore in his work ID photo from that week. But Eddie wasn't alone that day. Phone tower triangulations revealed another number near the same coordinates. A number registered under Mark's signs. Both men's phones pinged off the same tower within minutes of each other. Could it be a coincidence? Or had the two men, husband and confidant, somehow crossed paths in those final hours? Detectives kept this discovery secret, fearing leaks would compromise what came next, because one of them was about to talk. Weeks later, Eddie Montoya reached out to a local reporter. He claimed he was being set up, that the investigation had turned into a witch hunt. But when the reporter pressed him for details, Eddie made a strange admission. I went out there that day. I was supposed to meet her, but she never showed. Then he hung up. That statement contradicted his earlier claim that he hadn't seen Melissa that day at all. When detectives tried to re-interview him, Eddie had already left town. He quit his job, sold his truck, disappeared, just like Melissa. Then came the discovery that reignited the entire case. A local ranch worker found a rusted metal barrel near a remote arroyo about 12 miles north of the last search zone. Inside were charred remains of clothing, a set of keys, and a metal necklace pendant shaped like a crescent moon. Melissa's sister identified it immediately. It was the same pendant she'd given her sister for her 30th birthday. DNA results were partial but promising. The hair strands matched the same mitochondrial markers as Melissa's maternal line. It wasn't confirmation, but it was close enough to reopen the case from the ground up. In one of the most unexpected turns, investigators discovered a joint life insurance policy filed 2 months before Melissa disappeared, listing Mark as the sole beneficiary. The policy value? $250,000. But here's where it gets even darker. The witness who signed off on the paperwork was Eddie Montoya. That single connection between the two men, once dismissed as coincidence, now looked like collusion. Had they worked together? Or had one betrayed the other in a plan that went horribly wrong? Detectives couldn't prove conspiracy, but the pieces fit too neatly to ignore. In March of 2024, nearly a year after Melissa vanished, Mark Casias was arrested on charges of fraudulent insurance claims and obstruction of justice after it was discovered he'd attempted to cash in the policy, despite his wife still being officially missing. When confronted with the evidence, Mark broke down. But even in custody, he refused to admit involvement in Melissa's disappearance. He told investigators, "You're chasing ghosts." She left. She didn't want to be found. The community wanted closure. But what they got instead were more questions. 1 year after her disappearance, Melissa's family gathered at the same trailhead where her car was last seen. They lit candles, released sky lanterns, and whispered prayers into the night wind. No arrest for murder, no confirmed remains, just a family bound by pain and memories. Sierra spoke to the crowd, her voice trembling. "My sister's story isn't over, because the truth always finds a way out, no matter how long it takes." So what really happened to Melissa Casias? Did she plan to start over, only to meet the wrong person? Did betrayal strike closer to home than anyone imagined? Or was there someone else, someone we've never heard of, Who made her vanish forever? To this day, no one knows for sure. But one thing remains clear. The truth about Melissa's disappearance lies buried somewhere between trust and betrayal, love and fear, and secrets no one dare to tell. If you made it this far, share your thoughts below. What do you believe happened to Melissa's signs? Drop your theory in the comments, and never forget, every missing person has a story, and every story deserves to be told. The mystery doesn't end here. Subscribe now and join us as we uncover more chilling, unsolved cases.